Penn State football keeping everybody busy with all of the news on Friday from every angle. Of course, this is breaking news, so whenever you're watching this, this is Blue White Illustrated's breaking news, and Ryan Snyder is here to give it to you. So Ryan, what is our news today?
Yeah. Commitment number 4 in the class of 2024, Kenny Woseley joins the Nittany Lions, Philadelphia cornerback at an Imhotep charter. I don't think a big surprise, right? I think this is one that we saw coming really since his last official visit, which was at the end of January. You know, there was a lot of talk when that visit wrapped up that he was kind of right on the cusp of potentially committing. He takes some time to think it over, announce top schools. I know Rutgers, Michigan, and Nebraska were the top 4. He visited Rutgers quite a few times. I don't believe he even got to Michigan or Nebraska. I know he wanted to visit those 2 schools, but didn't get out to them. But this is it. I mean, he's done. He's been trending towards Penn State for a long time now. This is an offer that went out a long time ago. And really, whether it was now or whether it was in the spring, or even if he did go see some more schools, I always expected him to be a Nittany Lion. So Penn State gets its first cornerback in the class. They have 3 defensive players now, of course, 2 linebackers in Speca, Anthony Speca and Kari Jackson, and of course, Cooper Cousins, who committed over a year ago. So up to 4 now, a little bit below pace, I would say, compared to some other schools or compared to Penn State's normal pace. But yeah, they're catching some fire now. And of course, as we go into the spring here, I expect that to continue.
How long have they been on Kenny Woseley? Because I know that this is whenever we talk about Kenny, it's almost like you're signing off. Like Terry's been on this guy a while. So how long have they been courting Kenny Woseley and making him or convincing him that he is a Penn State DB?
Yeah. So I remember Kenny came up as a freshman to Penn State 7-on-7 camp. In June 2021, and I don't have it exactly in front of me, but I believe they offered in July 2021. So it's been almost 2 years now, year and a half, we'll say. I believe the offer was right at the end of June. So June 29, 2021, I believe is what the date was. And I know he participated in that camp a week or 2 prior to that. Good performance, as a freshman at the time. Certainly someone that was already on Terry Smith's radar. But getting able to see him up close, see how he moves as a freshman at that camp, certainly played a role in that. He visited a ton as well then. Came up for multiple games, came up for a game in 2021. I believe that was the Auburn game. Then he was here, I think, last spring for a visit. In the summer again. Didn't get to a game this year, but then he, of course, like I said, he came for that junior day at the end of January. So it was 5 visits total. Rutgers, he went to 3 times. Also saw Maryland and Pitt twice. But just look at the visits. I mean, 5 visits to Penn State. It was clearly heading in that direction. And whenever you offer a Philly guy a year and a half prior, not only that, but he's a cornerback who, of course, Terry Smith recruits there. So you have the whole regional coach dynamic that he built with Terry, but Terry's also his position coach. You add all that up, you have a great relationship. And Terry Smith, of course, is one of the best recruiters on the staff. So this was always one trending in Penn State's direction. I think it really became clear, though, after that most recent official or unofficial visit.
So what is your opinion of Kenny Woseley? And I know you've gotten to talk to him a little bit and got to know him a little bit. What are your opinions of this get for Penn State?
He gets after it. I really he's a little smaller, right? That doesn't have that Joey Porter size we always talk about. He's 5'11", 165, but physical. One thing, it's funny, I've talked about this on the board. I go to Imhotep games all the time, and they never throw at him, right? So I feel like I never get the highlights to share with you. But certainly a physical player. I've been impressed with him in press coverage and situations like that. Just a smart player as well. So whether he ends up being kind of a slot guy, we'll see. I think it'll kind of depend on who else they add here down the road, and of course how much he grows as well. But this was always a player that made sense for Penn State. He fits Penn State well from a culture perspective. He has ties with a lot of guys in Philadelphia as well to help from a recruiting perspective. So a lot of things to like there. It's a good pickup.
Some of the things that you keyed on there, one of my favorite sayings is you you can be small, but you can't play small.
Mhm.
And you see right from the go, Kenny Woseley, he's not afraid to hit. He'll get in there and run defense. So the slot versatility, his size, all those things, they do point to a slot type player. So I think that that's a really interesting get in this class. Although he can absolutely play on the outside. I don't think there's anything preventing him from being a boundary corner. Not the biggest guy in the world, good length for his size, but also you mentioned not the biggest guy in the world. So good length for your size when you're undersized means we have to put length on the conversation as well, but still meets, I think, a threshold of you're fine with those things, especially considering how he plays. A couple other things that stand out to me is that at first, I Imhotep, when I'm watching them, they run a lot of cover 3. They run a lot of just don't get beat deep, keep a lid on things, attack downhill. And you see some of that stuff with his ability to come down and hit. But also in those man press situations, he's got great feet, great hips. He can turn and run with a lot of players. So a great overall profile. Very few weaknesses, I think, generally in his athletic numbers. Not necessarily the numbers, but from what they seem like on film, what I would project watching him on film. Not that I don't have all of the specific numbers, but it doesn't seem like there's an issue with anything. So that's always a great place to start. Two things, though, that come to mind are, you mentioned Joey Porter Jr. Not every guy has to be the biggest guy in the world, but Penn State has set a certain threshold of athleticism at corner. Certain positions have elevated their profile as a room, not just individual players. Kenny, I think, has to prove he fits in that group. I think he's a very smart football player from what I've seen on film. I think he's athletic enough, but he's got to continue to work in those areas, getting bigger, getting stronger, getting more explosive to kind of fit in the room. Because you look at even at Daquan Hardy, we've talked to Terry Smith before, Brent Pry before when he was here as the defensive coordinator. Elite feet is what we've talked about with Daquan Hardy. So if you're going to be that slot guy, you have to have some unique traits. You have to have some gifts. And I think everything's really good about Kenny Woseley. I need to see some more to put him kind of in that upper tier category. But still, if you're talking about a guy that fits Penn State, fits smart, athletic, can play a lot of different coverages, he fits all of those really, really well.
Can't argue it. Can't argue. One thing I'll also say here is Keon Wiley, a former teammate. I think that was a good bond there that helped. I want to say get this over the line. I felt like this was always going to happen there, but I remember we got to talk to Keon a couple weeks ago as the freshmen were made available, and of course, with me covering recruiting, and I get the opportunity to ask someone like Nittany, for example, about Mason Robinson. I took the opportunity to ask Keon about Woseley as well. Just always communicating there about Penn State, giving that player-to-player perspective on things. That's something that Kenny's mentioned to me, and Keon's certainly been chipping away at the time. So want to give Keon Wiley some props there on the assist for the commitment here. As I said, this was always going to happen, but certainly Keon hasn't hurt as far as giving Kenny that feedback on what it's been like here the first year.
So as you mentioned, 4 players doubling up this week in the class of 2024 from 2 to 4. Where do we go from here? Kind of a vague open-ended question, but it's a vague open-ended time of the year because a lot of this is opening up. There's going to be more breaking news. I'm not asking a specific player, but where are we going from here in the class of 2024?
Yes, I mean, when we look at the calendar, right? Spring break just started this week. So we're going to have a quiet week here. Coaches are going to get a little vacation. And then we're really going to see, of course, spring practice is going to start March 14th. And then we're going to see March 18th and pretty much every weekend after that having a host of guys on campus. I've already have, I wouldn't say a dozen guys, but a handful of quality prospects expected for that March 18th weekend. We reported on a handful of also top 2024 guys coming to town. Benedict Ume is one that will be here March 28th. So as far as like a commitment or anything like that, there's not really one guy I have circled. There's guys that we put picks in for, and we expect them to get back at different points. Could I see another commitment or two in March? Certainly. There's a lot of guys that they're in a good position with, whether they come on the campus here a little earlier than April. If they make it to campus later in the month, certainly wouldn't surprise me if somebody pops. I think the goal really from this spring, get out of spring with 6 to 7 commitments. If you can add, they always want to add about 2 to 3 guys. That's kind of what they've averaged between March and May. So if you can add about 3 more, then you're sitting at 7 going in the summer. And then June and July is when the floodgates always open. Since official visits in the summertime began, Penn State really makes sure that they focus on June for their officials. And, we've seen the avalanche of commitments come since that rule was put into place a handful of years ago. So get to 7 here by the end of the spring. Set up all your official visits with your top guys. June and July should end up being another very busy time. This is going to be a class that goes above 25 too. So with them not having the surge of commitments that they've had in previous years by this time, it does feel like we may be talking about more guys into the fall, but I don't want to get ahead of myself there either. But I think the goal, like I said, get to 7 by the end of the spring. By the end of official visits, have that number up to 10, 11, 12. Then you have a surge of commitments in July, and then you'll be sitting pretty ready to go into the season.
If you want to know more about Kenny Woseley and his conversation with Ryan Snyder, more details, things to know about Kenny and his commitment to the Nittany Lions, BlueWhiteIllustrated.com is your place to go get it. Also, T. Frank's Film Room coming up on BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Some of the things I didn't get into here, including a player comp that I just randomly texted to Ryan a couple minutes ago before we recorded this. All that, you sign up now, $29.99 from now until the end of the summer to the start of the football season. So like I said earlier, like I've said this before, and like Ryan has said, the longer you wait, the less value you get there. So sign up now, get this inside information so that you can be ahead of the curve when there's breaking news. And this is, you sit here and you're telling your friends, I told you so, rather than saying, hey, did you see that breaking news video from BWI? And you send it to your friends. Like, you're like, here, slide this your way just so you need to know this. And as always, like it here on YouTube and subscribe to Blue White Illustrated on YouTube. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. We'll be back with more breaking news when it happens here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.